Welcome on into the Cleveland Browns Report. On today's show, I want to run through a 7-round mock draft, this time with trades as it is draft month. Probably got 1 to 2 more mock drafts in me before the big draft goes down on April 25th. But let's just kind of remind everyone about what picks the Browns have to work with in this year's draft. After trading a 5th and a 6th for Jerry Jeudy, they have 5 picks remaining. 2nd, 3rd, 5th, 6th, and a 7th. So they don't have a ton, or 2-6, I believe, at the end here, actually. Regardless, they don't have a ton of ammunition to work with. Now, when I started this mock draft off, I was banking on getting Edgerrin Cooper at pick 54. Fortunately, he went to the Rams at pick 52. I think we do have to remind ourselves your favorite player may not be available at pick 54. I think often people lose sight of that when they start coming at each other's throats saying, how did you take this guy? How did you not take that guy? Sometimes your guy's not there. There are 31 other teams picking. So, with Edgerrin Cooper off the board, I decided to make a little bit of a trade. So, I gave the New England Patriots a call and traded pick 54 for pick 68 in the draft. And in exchange for falling back from 54 to 68, picked up a future 3rd-round draft pick. I don't feel like this draft class is uberly loaded, and I don't think the Browns need a lot of draft picks in this year's draft anyway. Whereas if you can pick up an extra day 2 pick for next year, right now it may not feel like the best trade in the world, but fast forward a year and you're going to be really happy when the Browns are back in rounds 1, have a 2nd and 2 3rd-round picks. So with Cleveland waiting until pick 68, it kind of reminded me of a trade they made 2 years ago, where they also traded back to, ironically enough, pick 68 as well with the Houston Texans, who jumped up from 68 to 44, and the Browns acquired 2 extra 4th-round draft picks in the process. So, with that being said, after moving back to pick 68 with the Patriots so they could go get an offensive tackle to protect their quarterback of the future, in round number 3, I went wide receiver Malachi Corley. I am heavily zeroing in on the Western Kentucky Hilltopper. I feel like he is not only a really special player, he plays a lot tougher than his size might indicate. I think he is not only a really talented and good football player, I also think he fits the Browns' mold for draft picks. What did Andrew Berry share with us a few years ago? They target players with horse traits, right? I love that analogy because a duck can swim, kind of waddle / run, and kind of fly, but not very well. But a horse can't fly, can't swim, but damn it, it can run. And the Browns are looking for guys who've got a trait to their game that stands out, not just surface level across the board. And Malachi Corley, he stands out in yards after the catch. Don't believe me? Look at his yards after the catch compared to some of the top receivers in this draft. More than Malik Neighbors, more than Rome Odunze, more than Marvin Harrison. And I'm not saying you have to be yards after the catch king to be a good wide receiver. You can make your money at that position in a multitude of ways. But there should be no doubt that Malachi Corley is a yards after catch monster. And when you look at the Browns wide receiver room, they don't really have that guy, right? Amari Cooper last year, 271 yards after the catch. That ranks 75th. Think about it. He had 1,200 yards and only finished 75th in yards after the catch. Jerry Jeudy, little over half of his yards after the catch, 54th. The better of the two. So the Browns definitely have room to grow at that spot. So I'm not trying to draft another wide receiver that runs the same kind of routes of the receivers already on this team, right? A yak monster is the only thing missing from this Browns wide receiver room, which is why I think Malachi Corley would be a great pick for Cleveland, because in other spots and other teams, he would probably be asked to do more that he's really capable of. And then he might not flourish all that well. But in Cleveland, they're not going to ask him to do a lot more than that. I think Malachi Corley in his rookie season will have a pretty small and limited role. But when his number is called, he's going to make some big plays. He's going to go on wide receiver screens and turn 3rd and 8s into 1st and 10s. And like I've been saying, this wide receiver room for Cleveland, it's pretty pretty jam-packed. There's not a lot of space. Cooper, Judy, Moore, Tillman, and I'll say David Bell, I know, hot take, are all locks to make this roster. So your average Joe may feel like the Browns desperately need another wide receiver. I don't think they need another wide receiver. I think they need a different type of wide receiver than what they already have. And none of those 5 guys I just mentioned really excel when they get the ball in their hands. They do a great job leading up to the catch, and they still do a good job after, but not to the effect of Corley, which is why I was very pleased to see him available in round number 3, because other teams will probably overlook him because he's a bit of a one-trick pony. He went to a non-Power 5 school, and they'll look at other players. For Cleveland, that's great. They only need one trick left in the wide receiver room, and that's what Corley does best. So do you want to pick Malachi Corley? Yes or no? Give me your honest opinion in the comments section below. All right, moving on to round number 3, pick 85 in this mock draft. I go running back out of Tennessee, Jaylen Wright. Very excited to see Wright available at this spot here. 137 carries last year for the Volunteers, 1,100 yards, 7.4 yards a carry, 4 touchdowns. Look at the average for a moment. I think I just casually said 7.4 yards a carry. That is a ridiculous number. He's 5'10", 210 pounds. He ran a sub-4 40-yard dash, finished second in the FBS last year with that 7.4 yards per carry. He is a home run machine. He is a player that thrives when they get into open space. Think about the Browns running back room last year. Jerome Ford, Kareem Hunt, the moment they got into open space, they were quick to be tackled. Jaylen Wright's got that getaway speed, right? He's got that separation element to his game where when he turns the corner, you're not catching him. And they really need that in this running back room. I mean, until Nick Chubb returns, I'm looking at Jerome Ford and Deontay Foreman on this depth chart, and neither player really stands out in that spot. Jerome Ford is not slow. He's kind of above average-ish speed. But Jaylen Wright's got some really special speed at that spot. So I think he brings something different to this running back room. And the Browns running back room needs speed. I mean, let's just say Nick Chubb is back week 4 or week 5. Okay. Get Nick Chubb, who we know is just going to do everything awesome. And you get Jaylen Wright for some speed element paired with Chubb. And that's a 1-2 punch no AFC North team wants to face once those two get rolling. Now, before we get on to the rest of today's mock draft, I do want to plug this awesome deal going on with our friends over at Fanatics. I thought this Browns hat was just really cool, to be honest with you guys. I love the curveness of it, the Cleveland Browns. I thought it was an awesome hat, and I just wanted to share it with you guys because if you think it's awesome and you want it to add to your closet, go to chatsports.com/Browns hat. I put that link in the comments and description of today's video. Get it today because these sales, they kind of come and go on Fanatics, and I don't want you to miss out on this awesome deal. Moving on to round 5, I go Ohio State linebacker Tommy Ikenberg, a Cleveland native, and we know the Browns have a bit of an affinity for drafting Buckeyes, right? We've seen them do it for a few straight years now, whether it's Luke Whippler last year, whether it's UDFA signing Ronnie Hickman. There seems to be DeJuan Jones, an express from Columbus to Cleveland. So let's just repeat history here and take the violent, mean, tough SOB linebacker from the Buckeyes. Now, the con I've got for Eichenberg, he's not a big playmaker. Like, he's going to fill up the stat sheet with his tackles, but he's not going to stand out, whether it's in pass rush or in coverage abilities. In his career with the Columbus Blue Jackets, with the Ohio State Buckeyes in Columbus, 82 tackles a season ago, 2.5 tackles for loss. The year before is really when he broke out, right? 120 tackles, 12 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks. So we saw that type of production in his third season with the Bucs. Then we saw a bit of a drop-off in 2023. So the question becomes, can he get back to that 2023 form? And I think that's why he falls to round 3 of the draft. If he played the same way he played in 2022 and 2023, no shot he's available in round number 5. But because there was that dip, I think he could slip a little bit. and maybe the Browns find a bit of a hidden gem. I wish I could have gotten Edgerrin Cooper in round number 2, but once he was taken, I didn't want to just force a linebacker pick. I'm not going to have the Browns reach on a linebacker when this linebacker class isn't all that touted. It's not all that great. I like Edgerrin Cooper. Peyton Wilson has some really nice upside to his game. Junior Colson from Michigan is a really nice run stopper, but none of these guys have that extra high gear to make them a Pro Bowl caliber linebacker in this league. So when my number 1 guy, Cooper, was gone, I was happy to trade back, still get a really good player, Malachi Corley and Jaylen Wright, pick up a future draft pick, and we wait to address linebacker until day 3. Now, what do you think the Browns' biggest need is going into the draft? I think it's linebacker. I think if there is one position on the field right now that even has somewhat of a roster competition, it is linebacker. I think every other spot is pretty much sewn up, but Devin Bush at outside linebacker for this team is the one spot where you could have a rookie push him for that starting job. Moving on to round number 6, I'm going to go with Tanner McLachlan, the tight end out of Arizona, a Canadian from Alberta. So we are in the day 3 territory where we are all learning new names together. He's 6'5", 244 pounds, so below-ish average size, like good height for a tight end. It's a good target to throw to. The weight is a bit of a concern when it comes to being able to block NFL defensive linemen. At 244 pounds, if you're on the offensive line at that spot, at that weight, it's going to be a little tough. But you talk to any Arizona fan about their tight end, Tanner, the thing that they all mention, the thing that just keeps coming up over and over again is he's going to outwork you. He's going to bring effort on every single play, and he's going to be the last guy in, or first guy in, last guy out, as I butchered that, type of guy in the locker room. And in day 3 of the draft, I'm looking for good characters, right? I'm looking for guys that, sure, may not have the best physical traits, but let's be honest, if they did, they wouldn't be available at that spot. So I want just high IQ, high-level players that I think could step into this locker room and work their tail off for a roster spot. Those are the day 3 players I have found to be some of the most successful in the NFL. Guys that, with a chip on their shoulder and a great work ethic, always put themselves in a spot where they could at least compete. And then you add in the fact that, the Browns do need some help at tight end. Jordan Akins didn't show us a ton last year. Giovanni Ricci is, and then to round out this mock draft, I'm going to go with adding another tight end in the draft, offensive lineman, a little bit of a no-brainer. Leveston. I think when you look at the Browns' just overall offensive line, they don't desperately need help at that spot, right? They made a couple of signings already, but I think when you look ahead to 2025, well, we talked about this few times on the show, but for any new viewers, Wyatt Teller, Joel Petonio, next year have cap hits of over $21 million. There's a good chance the Browns maybe move on from one of these two players as they get a little bit older and they get a little bit more expensive. An offensive guard play, while it's important, don't get me wrong, you can find some good replacements later in the draft, right? Neither one of these guys were first-round draft picks after all. So I think for the Browns, they may start to think a little bit ahead and throw a dart at an offensive guard and see, all right, if one of those two players kind of regresses or the injuries start piling up and we need to save some cap space, we'd rather have a seed growing from last year's draft than to take a guy in the 2025 NFL draft in round 5 that we are going to toss into the starting job. The offensive line, it's set. All 5 starters. I guess you could have a debate about Dwan Jones, Conklin, and Wills, but on the interior, it's Petonio, Posick, and Teller. And there's really no question about it. They brought back Michael Dunn. You've got Luke Whippler. So this isn't even so much about a depth need for the Browns, but rather just I've got a feeling that maybe the Browns are going to want a future guard in 2025, and maybe they go get one in this year's draft. All right, let's just revisit the picks I made for the Browns. So after trading out of pick 54 and acquiring pick 68 for the Patriots, and a future third-round pick from New England. Malachi Corley was my selection. Then I went Jaylen Wright, running back out of Tennessee. Tommy Ikenberg, linebacker from Ohio State. Tanner McLachlan, the Arizona tight end. And then Kansas State guard KT Leveston. So, grade my mock draft for me. Give me your worst. A, B, C, D, or F. I'm thinking I get like a B grade, right? I didn't necessarily find anyone that's going to be a day one starter, but when you don't pick till 68, you're not really expecting to do that. And even if you were picking at 54, it's unlikely you do that. So I'd give myself a B grade. But let me know what grade you'd give my mock draft. All right, let's pick a card to wrap up the show. Mr. Trace.
I'm going to roll with the 6 of clubs.
6 of clubs?
6 of clubs.
I'm going to go with the 7 of diamonds.
I like it.
Yeah, just going to keep in the same vicinity as you. All right, here we go. Queen of Hearts. Queen of Hearts. All right, boys and girls, that will do it for us on today's show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I see Ray Bidding got the Queen of Hearts correct during our live show today, which was filmed Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern. So come hang out with us on a future edition of the Cleveland Browns Report.